everyone, welcome to Motivators Podcast. This is Emily McCullough, and I have a new co-host today with me, Tatum Winslow. She's our Director of Support at Motivity. And we have a fabulous guest with us today, Dr. Ivy Chung, and she is the owner of Sum of Learning, and she will be talking to us today about her story, her journey, and we're excited to dive in. So, Ivy, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. And thanks for having me here today. So again, my name is Ivy Chung, and I'm the owner and executive director of Sum of Learning. I have been a board certified behavior analyst since 2008. I'm originally from Hong Kong, and I moved to the US to continue my education. So all along, my plan was to become a clinical psychologist. But during my junior year, I actually got a chance to work with a little boy with autism as an ABA tutor. And yes, back in the days, we didn't call ourselves behavior technicians. We were either ABA tutor or ABA therapist. This experience really exposed me to the world of ABA, and I was very fortunate to work under the guidance of some incredible behavior analysts who remain my mentors to this day. This experience completely changed my career path. As I said, I wanted to be a clinical psychologist. And just as I was preparing to apply for grad school, magically, the University of Washington offered their very first ABA graduate program in 2007. Of course, I applied, and I remember there were only 7 or 9 of us in our cohort. It was very small, but we were all very close. After I graduated, a fantastic opportunity was presented to me. I joined a national healthcare company and became part of the pioneering team tasked with establishing their first ABA program under the TRICARE benefits.
Wow.
In there, I had a lot of opportunities to learn the business side of running the program, running an ABA business, in addition to getting mentored on being a behavior analyst. I spent about 5 years there, also working toward my PhD at the same time. And in 2013, I took a leap and pursued my dream of starting my own practice, Sum of Learning. And from there, the rest is history.
Wow. Now, so it's been 10 years now.
It's been 10 years. It feels a little surreal that we just celebrated our 10th anniversary this year.
That's great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
One of the things that I learned about you by getting, just knowing you over the years is your story of also being a minority in the BCBA, and also being able to serve individuals and families of diverse backgrounds. And I guess, could you tell us a little bit about your background and your cultural history?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I was originally from Hong Kong, and when I moved here, there's just not a lot of Chinese providers in the healthcare field, I would say. And I didn't think that I would stay here, to be honest. I thought I would just bring back whatever I learned back home to Hong Kong. And I stumbled upon the field of ABA, and Chinese providers in the ABA field, it's even more rare and scarce. So very early on, I knew that was something that I really want to work on. I really want to contribute to the community. So early on, when I started Sum of Learning, I had an amazing opportunity to work with a nonprofit organization called Open Doors for multicultural families. And we had our outreach partner with them and offer a lot of services in parent training, in providing workshop to a variety of families who have diverse cultural background. That was a really, really cool experience, and I learned a lot in terms of how to interact with individuals or families from, with diverse background, because, you have your own bias, you have your own stereotype. And through that process, I really learned a lot about my own biases And I learned about how to be an effective communicator when working with families who don't share the same background with me. So it was really cool, and we still work with Open Doors, and every chance that we have, we offer workshops to them. We work with them on parent training. And I encourage my staff to do that as well. It really is, it's a unique opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you find that are some of the challenges with your staff that are working across, I guess, cultural barriers? Like, what are some of those challenges?
I am not seeing a lot of challenges. I think that's one thing. It's surprising. I mean, we're in Seattle area, and my group is very diverse, to be honest. We have 13 BCBAs. We have staff that are from India. We have staff that are from Korea, from Japan, from China. Pretty diverse group to meet the needs of the clients who are coming in. And Seattle is a very diverse, culturally diverse city as well. So we don't encounter a lot of barriers, but I would say language barrier is always difficult. The barrier to how families perceive disability, I think that's always one of the things that kind of difficult to talk about. For some of those cultures, I know, like in our Chinese culture, it's not something that we openly talk about, and for some families, they might feel like it's a shame to be talking about that. So working through that perspective and kind of letting them know, like, hey, we respect your choice to not share any diagnosis information about your child, but let's really talk about the benefit here if we do, and the cost here if we don't, and really kind of engage that process with the family so that they have all the information that they need to make the most informed decision about treatment. And I think that's really kind of what we focus a lot on. Is we don't really force people to make to accept our ideas. We engage in a process, we engage in a conversation with them, so that, I mean, ultimately, you're the parents. You get to make the decision. So I think that's what we're good at, and I think that's really kind of having that cultural background helps me understand that, what, we got to respect. Everyone has different perspective. You gotta listen, and you gotta work with them so that they feel that they can trust you, and that they accept my perspective as well.
Yeah, what great experiences your staff have.
Yeah.
Awesome. One of the things that I remember from conversations with you and your staff is how much you have you put into your training and your staff training, especially with early start Denver model. And so I thought some of our listeners might not have a clear understanding of the early start Denver model. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that and why that's a treatment model that you like to use at your center.
Sure. Yeah. So the Early Start Denver model was developed by Doctors Sally Rogers from UC Davis and Jerry Dawson from the University of Washington in early 2000s. It's an evidence-based intervention approach specifically designed for young children with autism spectrum disorder. What's great about this approach is that it combines both developmental and AB principles to provide a comprehensive early intervention that targets social engagement, communication, relationship building, and all using play-based and developmentally appropriate activities in a natural environment. The ESDM is something that we really like and see the effectiveness. And I would say it's a pretty dominant treatment approach that we apply when it comes to our early intervention services. Mm-hmm. One of our BCBAs, who is now our director of early intervention services, she used to be part of the ESDM research team at the University of Washington. So she was trained firsthand in ESDM. There weren't a lot of ESDM trained providers in the area, and we're just so extremely lucky to have her train, mentor, and pass along the ESDM knowledge to our incoming BCBAs over the years. We see how this approach works, how much progress our early learners make, and we love this approach so much that 2 years ago, we actually decided to pilot an early intervention program, which kind of simulates a school setting, but we adopt a lot of the ESDM approach in the program. And the goal of this program is to build school and learning readiness in our young learners. So we piloted with 3 of our 2-year-old in a group environment, 2.5, and they graduated from the program and they are thriving now in a kindergarten mainstream classroom. So the outcomes of this program have turned out amazingly well. And to be honest, I mean, completely exceeded our expectations. And by that, I mean, parents are really happy. Clients have made a ton of progress. They're ready for school with little or no support. And our staff, they just enjoy every minute being in that program to experience all the success. So the ESDM has, really kind of being the approach that we see such a drastic difference compared to other treatment approaches. And I think that, one of that is it's really the developmental approach. And then for a lot of practitioner in ABA, I think, we know that one of the biggest criticisms of ABA is that it never considers like development, right? Like we're so behavioral based, we're doing all these protocols and, making changes and implementing behavioral, strategies, but we don't take into consideration of the child's development. And it makes a huge difference. And I think that's what the ESDM is really good at. And we really enjoy using that approach. And like I said, we're super lucky to have someone who's firsthand trained in that research and being able to disseminate that information to our group and continue to really mentor the next group and disseminate the ESDM knowledge.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when you were saying that there's a lot of the criticisms around some of the hesitancies with parents that are approaching this new treatment approach, or this, for them it's new, that ABA is new, and so but they might have like some conflicting information where they're hearing about some of the criticisms of ABA, and maybe that it's not person based or child or play based. And it seems like the ESDM model could be like a really great solution to those parents that are hesitant to trying ABA because of some of those fears of it, of like you said, it not focusing on the child as much as like child-led type of a treatment model. So that's great to hear about the success of that. And I think I feel like I'm not hearing about the ESDM model being used as much as it used to. Yeah. So anyone listening to this, go ahead, Ivy.
Yeah, no, I was saying it's really surprising. And I know the ESDM, they do training workshop to get providers certified in ESDM. But still, I mean, I haven't really met a lot of ESDM providers. I mean, even it's been 10 years, we're in business, and it's very rare that we could come across another ESDM trained provider. So I don't know, like maybe they need to do a little bit of marketing.
Well, especially since the literature in ABA, it comes like the strong studies come from the ESDM model.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And to be honest, it's not that much different than a naturalistic teaching approach, but it gives the framework. It's is there. It really kind of gives the provider to learn, like, how do you incorporate all this child development into play, at different levels of intervention, what kind of developmental appropriate activities that you should adopt. So that's the part that makes it easier for the practitioners to understand and to use the intervention. So yeah, I thought it's interesting. I think you're right. Like, it doesn't get talked a lot, and certainly, it's not like PRT where everyone kind of know what this is. And when it comes to USDM, I feel like it's still not very well known.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess you could have already said this, Ivy, but do you think it's marketing, or do you think there are other reasons why people, because I've heard of it. This is probably the first time I've heard an explanation of what that is. And I was thinking, like, man, I wish a lot of places I used to work at did use that, because when I was a younger BCBA, I know that was one of my biggest mistakes, was just like, here's this list of skills, and I'm just going to keep throwing these at you. And this might not even be like developmentally appropriate for you to work on. And then retroactively, I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, if I could just shake myself and be like, stop, this is not what a 3-year-old needs to work on, or 4 or 5 or whatever age. But yeah, like, do you have any other thoughts besides maybe marketing as to why it's not?
I don't know. I suspect it's part of marketing. I also suspect it's just the age range that this model applies. It's very, very early intervention focused. If I remember correctly, I think this model applies to 0 to 48 months. So I think for some providers, like, what I do after 48 months. But in reality is, you can still adopt a lot of the ideas, the concept from ESDM, and apply it to someone a little older. Because there's that underlying concept that is teaching you is it's a developmental approach, right? If you were to teach a 7-year-old on sorting versus a 3-year-old on sorting, I'm not even sure that we teach sorting to a 3-year-old, but let's say 7-year-old and then a 20-year-old, it's a very different process. And I think that's, the ESDM might not tell you what to do with a 20-year-old, but it teaches you the concept of, like, you got to think about how to make it developmental appropriate. So I think that's kind of what I'm getting it from.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So you had this awesome pilot that sounds like turned out so well. Do you have any other initiatives at Sum of Learning that you're excited about?
That's a great question. And it's funny that you asked. So I told you earlier that Sum of Learning just reached our 10-year milestone. So with that, I decided to treat myself with a little work retreat. I went away for 3 full days, abandoned my child, my husband, rented a hotel room with 180-degree of lake view, told my staff not to text me, not to call me, email me, and I'm just going to disappear for 3 days. So I had 3 full days to just think about where I want to take Sum of Learning as we enter our 2nd decade. And from this retreat, I've come up with a few projects that I really want to complete within the next year. One of the initiatives, which is my priority right now, is to build a compliance department. We have compliance procedures, protocols in place currently, but as we continue to grow, I've recognized that we need to scale up our operations. And the compliance department seems to be the next big necessary step that we need to take. And I'll tell you, adding Motivity to our practice is one of the many steps that we needed to complete to get us closer to building a compliance department. And we couldn't be happier to have chosen Motivity. The other project that is underway is our behavior technician mentorship program. So when I founded Sum of Learning, my mission is to groom and mentor the next generation of ABA practitioners. I can very proudly say that this is one thing that we do very, very well. And it's evident by the number of BTs that we have changed the career path. We've turned them into BCBAs over the years. Most of my BCBA staff, they started as BT, and they've been with me 7, 8, 9, 10 years, really. And They're doing a fantastic job. We have a very robust and highly reputable practicum program, practicum supervision program to get our BCBAs ready for their first job once they pass the exam. It's very rare that we hire external BCBAs. Most of my BCBAs, they are internally promoted from a BT position to a BCBA position when they finish their graduate coursework and pass the exam. And so, yeah, that's definitely one of the models that I think makes us stand out. Is, it's very rare that we hire external BCBAs. We don't need to, because every year we just have enough practicum students, and I don't give them up. If they're good, I hold on to them, and I will make it work so that they will be part of our team. I mean, the investment is in. Let's make sure that, they can continue to do good work, and oftentimes they really enjoy being in Sum of Learning. So that's kind of what we're good at. But the past few years, I definitely have realized not every BT wants a BCBA career. Many of them just want to stay as a BT. They don't want to go back to school. They want to just work one-on-one with a client. So with some of the help of our more senior BTs, we have formed a work group to discuss what we can do as an organization to support and mentor BTs. And we want to explore what types of opportunities we can help them advance in their career. I'm very excited about it. We just started the work group, and I can't wait to see what the end product would look like. I think this would really help with retention and really help solidify our field. I mean, the turnover is just so high. And I think part of it's, when we hear about survey, why people are, quitting the job, one of the reasons is they don't really have any advancement, right? Like they stay as a BT forever. What's next? And I think there are a lot of things that they can do, and we want to explore it. And I hope by incorporating their feedback, their input, we can craft something for them.
Yeah, I mean, I just came back from a conference that was the whole topic was on staffing and retention, and being able to provide and nurture BTs who want to stay BTs, but also BTs that want to grow up, grow into BCBAs. And it sounds like you've already kind of figured out a lot of it because of your retention rate. And how many? Do you know what your retention rate is?
At one point, I know it was very, very low. We're like around like 20% compared to like a 50-60% in the industry. And I mean, there are times we do hit like 50, but I would say when it comes to turnover, it's very rare that we lose people because they're not happy. We almost always lose people because they have family issues. They have to move back home. That's out of state. And it's very, very rare we have an unhappy person. Or, we lose people because their mind is already set in a different field and they're just using this position as a stepping stone for their next career, which we totally understand. But we retain, we really do. And I think that's definitely one of the things that we're very good at. And we have BTs that have been with us for 7 years. We have BTs that have been with us for 3-5 years. And when we have turnover, it's usually, under 6 months. And you kind of know. But after that, they stay. They want to do this for a very long time. So
yeah. Well, Ivy, I have another idea. We got to have you back sometime and talk completely about burnout and retention because
we totally should. Yes, I would love to.
That's awesome, especially as
learn
we
all your
follow
secrets.
your work group. Yeah, sorry, Tatum. What?
Oh, I said learn all your secrets because I think there's a lot of owners who just are grasping at straws of just how can I help retain my staff and everything. It's a huge issue. It's been kind of fascinating to watch. Yeah. But those are it's really cool to hear that like you have like homegrown, if you will, BCBAs and I think that says a lot. The fact that you don't have to hire outside of your company says a lot about how happy those people are with you guys, with your organization. And I think that's a really, I don't want to say rare thing, because I know there's like a lot of good companies out there, but it's just, I think that some individuals find that hard. I find that to be a hard thing to find in their career is an organization where they feel happy, you know? And so, and I think that's probably also what owners are struggling with, is how do I help my staff feel like they are valued here and that they should want to stay, and I do want them to be here. You know, it's how do you do all of that? So that would be a really cool follow-up episode for sure.
All right. Well, we'll follow up on that. I did want to go back and talk a little bit about some of your compliance department operational efficiency. I guess could you tell us a little bit about how you're using technology? And I just remember when we were first in talks with you at Motivity, one of the things that really stood out to me is the process that you went through to like evaluate and select technologies was very detail oriented and thorough. So if you could tell us a little bit about your initiative with technology and how you choose the vendors and providers that you work with.
Yeah. I am never the type of person who just get excited about new technology. I am, but I also tell myself, like, don't feel desperate about the technology. So I think a lot of ABA business owners who existed before all this practice management software or online data collection platform, would agree that technology has made operations more streamlined and efficient. I mean, we used paper timesheets, paper claims, wrote paper session notes, paper graphs, everything just paper. And when it was just 5 or 10 clients, for the first year or two, of our business, it seems very manageable. But boy, as you grow, the pile of paper grows into boxes of paper. The boxes grow into stacks of boxes. The stacks of boxes take up your whole 300 square feet office. So physically, the physical storage is a problem. And I think that was a kind of a breaking point for me to say, hey, you know what? I am running out of space to store these documents. And, I need to do something about it. But really, I think, the biggest problem, besides the physical space, is the ability to access the records in a timely manner that pushes me to go electronic. And that's kind of the compliance piece that I was talking about earlier. When we moved to Motivity, which, by the way, is the very first online data collection platform that we sign up. And I know it sounds crazy. I mean, if you kind of do the math, we sign up with Motivity, I think in July 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in business since 2013. So it took me 8 years to get convinced to do online data collection. I was stubborn, so a little bit of that has to do with that. But we moved to Motivity, and what really got me drawn to Motivity is the ability to have a more streamlined process to access and review clinical records. When we have paper notes and paper data, it was really difficult to perform any internal audit. We didn't know if the BT was doing a good job writing notes. We didn't know if they wrote the notes the same day. We don't even know if there's a note until maybe weeks later when we asked them to bring them their notes. It was impossible to have them turn in their notes daily or to scan it and save it. So, we didn't know any of that is happening. To verify appointment and to make sure that it matches the time on the session notes, it requires so much effort. So by the time that, our payer requested the records, it was such a hassle to retrieve them. And sometimes we don't even have them. So it becomes such a liability to us not being able to review the notes and access, really the access piece. And, a lot of our clients have home services, and to leave those documents in their home, there are times, there are nights that, I'm like, gosh, like what if something happened and all my records are gone? So nothing was time efficient. It wasn't saved, and time is cost. So it's not cost efficient. But now that we have Motivity, we're really able to access these documents with just a few clicks. And it makes a world of difference in our ability to audit and enhance our compliance process. So that was kind of the improvement we see at an organization level. But at a clinical or client level, I think, it gives us the ability to readily access the data and session notes. And that means the BCBA can respond to the data to make program modification much quicker. And they don't have to wait until their next supervision session to do so. So I think as a result, it also enhances our clinical quality in general.
Right. So I guess what are are there any other tools that you also use to help you with your streamlining?
Well, practice management software. We moved from another company to Aloha. And again, it was great to know that you guys finally integrated. It makes, again, like it's like the perfect couple. And as a user, it's great because it's just, again, really streamlined the whole process. And Aloha was really user friendly, and you guys are also very user friendly. And when I say that, what I mean is we don't have to do extensive training to our staff for them to learn the technology. And I think, as an owner, that is really important. I mean, we do have 50 employees, and the transition is huge. And, once we roll it out, we roll it out, right? We don't have a lot of times we can do training. So being able to have the staff just jump in and use it right away, that to me is cost saving. That's time saving. So that was really good. Really, streamline our whole process. Other technology area, during the pandemic, I think a lot of us started using telehealth. So, having video conferencing has been great. And now we restarted using that mostly for parent training, because parent training was one of the biggest barriers for us is, parents don't have the time. And, if you ask them to come to your office to do a parent training, or you go to the home and ask them, to take breaks and, or they have to stay home for us to have parent training. It's such a big barrier, and they don't want to participate. And since the pandemic, having, telehealth, it really increases our access to parents, and they could just stop in the middle, lunchtime in their office and give us 30 minutes, and we can talk about their child. So it has really opened up more opportunities for us to work and support families.
Yeah, that's great. The pandemic really, I think, was in that way, a blessing for the field to be able to move forward with telehealth. Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, for organizations that are looking to onboard a new technology like Motivity, like, could you explain what your process looked like? How did you get your staff on board, and what did it look like to get everything kind of rolled out over time?
Yeah. I think you said that I was very detail oriented, and I really am. Very, very organized, and I like to plan. As much as I know the plan doesn't always go well, but with Motivity, the onboarding, it was really easy. So I had the entire process laid out. Every time we introduce a new technology, it doesn't matter if it's Motivity's, Aloha, or other things. The first thing that I do is I don't introduce it, I don't announce it to everybody. I always start with a pilot. I don't introduce something without testing it first. So with that, and even with a pilot, I carefully pick my participants. So for example, with Motivity, I want to make sure that my participants are users that are tech savvy and users that are not tech savvy. I want people that are tech savvy because they can help me problem solve technical problems. Whereas the not so tech savvy ones, they can help me identify the processes that might not be user friendly. I want participants to also represent different types of users. So, for example, I want to make sure that we have BCBAs who have worked with early learners and then BCBAs who work with young adults, because these two groups, they write programs very differently, and they might even take data very differently. So I want to have input from a very diverse group of participants. Once we kind of go through the pilot phase, and Tatum was a huge help during that phase. And really, I mean, we appreciate her help so much because we do a lot of customization in terms of the templates that we want. And there was a lot of discussion of how to make the technology fit our needs. So we went through that phase, and I want to say it was at least like 6 months, if not more. And then we added a second group. And we meet with Tatum. We met with Tatum every week at the beginning, and then it was kind of like a 1-month check-in. Behind the scene, we were all doing our work, and we were, having our own work group to kind of talk about like the challenges that we have. So there was pretty intense pilot group that was ongoing during that period of time. And once we feel like we're good, then we started to test it with a second pilot group. And from there, we continue to monitor, evaluate, and check in with Tatum and kind of see like what we need to do more and what is not working. And finally, we roll it out to the users. So we roll it out to our BTs, and we have 30 plus BTs. And what I did was, again, I picked just one group. I picked the EI, our early intervention program BTs, to have them test it out. And it was so easy. Nobody even had any questions and problems. We didn't even have to do training. So from there, I got all the information that I need for us to roll it out. And the process was easy. We announce it and we say, this is the date, we're going to roll it out. And your supervisor will give you the training, and we'll check in. And the check-in piece is really, really important because I don't know about you guys, but you go to a conference, you go to a workshop, and you take a class, and you think that, oh yeah, that's easy, I get it, and you use it, right? And you didn't see any problems because you didn't know what you don't know. Right. But after a month, this is usually when I start seeing people having questions and like, hey, this is not the best way to do it. What can we do? And I think the check-in, the monitoring a month after is going to be crucial and critical to make sure that we're being efficient and we're being effective using that technology. So that was kind of what we do. And we have rolled this out for a full year now. To all the employees, we have our training protocols all written up. Every new hire who comes in, we know what to train them on, what to hold on to training them on, because we don't want to overwhelm them. But the process has been really smooth. And, I think that the key point here is really to lay out a plan and don't do it too quickly. You will always have a group of staff that are really good with technology, and then a group that unfortunately not. And I've learned so many times that, yep, it makes sense to me, but it doesn't make sense to some other people. So you have to do it very slowly. You have to do it very systematically, and you have to plan it out and anticipate issues, and really have the open communication, like for your users to tell you like what's working and what's not working. So the user part, I think that's really the key.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so.
Did you
It
have anything
was,
to add, Tatum?
I would just say I can attest this was very systematic. I really enjoyed helping some of learning on board because I felt like you had a plan and we could discuss the plan and like what's the feasibility and everything. And then I think another thing that we had to talk a lot about too was just like the language that you were using versus the language that I was using and making sure we were on the same page with that. And I think I've noticed that with other organizations too, is sometimes coming into Motivity, there's some words that we might use that maybe they don't use that way. And so it's really important for the customer success consultant and the organization to be like, well, how do you call this? Like, what do you call this? And what do you call that? So that whenever we're building these programs or we're building templates for you, it's exactly how you want your staff to understand it and everything like that. I think that was like another big part of it was just making sure that we were structuring things the way that made sense to your team based on how you talked about like your sets and all of this different stuff.
A language barrier.
Yeah, it was a language
Exactly.
barrier.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, yeah, but I really thought that having your first group and then coming in with your second group was great because that first group was, I felt from my perspective, was also really helping that second group along so that it wasn't just, all of us doing all the heavy lifting. But at that point, it was like, okay, here's some people who have been here before. And now here's everyone who's new. And now they have like a huge support system. And it's not just like Tatum and Ivy leading
Yeah.
the way, but it's like, Tatum, Ivy,
I
and
would
multiple
say,
people.
yeah, by now I'm probably the least efficient user of Motivity because I really don't use it, right?
Sure, yeah.
Designing, I'm not writing programs, and we have a team that they can answer questions, they do the training, and so yeah, it was quite a process, and I enjoyed that process because I think it's very much needed. And oftentimes, when I talk to other owners, they just jump in so quickly without really knowing what they need. And they were sold on the technology just because, some companies, they have good marketing teams to convince you to, go to them. And I was very constant about that and really make sure that I know what I want and what I don't want. And for me, my philosophy in running a business, it's all about sustainability. I don't do this for 2 years or 4 years. I do this for 20 years, 30 years. Like I want to do this. I want this business to sustain. And there's no reason for me to rush. And I know as an employee, when I was working for other companies in the past, I hate when someone introduce a technology or introduce a new concept or a new idea, and then it lasts for 2 months and then it didn't work. And I absolutely hated that idea. And that was one of the things that I kept telling myself, like, I don't want to be that employee. I don't want to be that person who gets so excited about new things, but then didn't think through what needs to be in place to make that new idea last. So that was important to me. And this is probably why it took me 8 years to find you guys.
I think too, an advantage you might have had, Ivy, is, and maybe that some customers don't have because you did take 8 years to do electronic data collection, is you had paper still, right? And so I think some of our orgs probably feel like they do have to rush because maybe they're currently paying for something else. And they're like, well, gosh, we want to switch over here. But I think to speak to your point, it would still be good if you want to make a change, like, do you have a longer term plan? Because rushing can make it very stressful for staff and for you as the owner, because maybe it wasn't as smooth as you were hoping. And now everyone's stressed and we're just trying to kind of tie it all up in a nice little bow, but it looks kind of shoddy, even if it's a really good system. And so if anyone's listening is like, well, that's not fair because she had paper and I was coming from a different organization, like, I think that's valid, but I think maybe it's good to just kind of take a breath and maybe meet with the customer success consultant first and be like, what's our long-term thought? Like, how much time should it take me to get to this point so that you can maybe plan, like, how long do I want to pay for two systems, and maybe can I do things ahead of time that maybe will kind of like decrease the cost. Like maybe you start planning ahead of time with that CSC as to what like that's going to look like and things like that before you make the big jump. But that might be like a conversation to have, before that. Anyway, that was just kind of a thought I was having that maybe other org owners would have.
The time now, it's very different when I first started. I mean, like I said, when I started this 10 years ago, there wasn't even a lot of companies who do this, right? So yeah, it took me 8 years, but that's also because there just weren't a lot of choices. And now there are a lot of choices. So take the time, do the demo with them, take the time to ask yourself, like, what do you need as an organization? Are you willing to compromise certain things? I wasn't really ready to compromise anything. I really need that high level of customization, and that's what Motivity can offer me. Whereas others, they can't. They give me a template, and this is how we do it, and that's not gonna work for me. So that's what we need, and that's what we go after. And I'm not saying Motivity is the way to go. I think you guys have great technology, but it doesn't mean that it works for everyone.
Sure.
As the owner, it's your responsibility to evaluate that and make that choice and take the time. It's your business. Nobody's rushing you. Make the best decision, because rolling back on a decision, going back to the transition is going to take you time. And again, time is money, time is cost. So just slow down. Yes.
That's really good advice. Yeah. So we're at time now, but I wanted to thank you so much for this interview, this conversation, and letting us get to know you and some of learning more. Is there anything else you want to share with the audience here today about you, about anything we talked about?
Great question. Like I said, I spent 3 full days thinking about, what's next. I think there are a lot of business owners these days compared to, when I first started. The field is growing, and I think it's really important, when it comes to technology. I think it's really important that we as a healthcare industry, it's important that we don't lose sight of why we're doing this, right? And like I said, technology is great. It helps us streamline. I worried about people oftentimes getting too excited, making too quick of a decision that is going to hurt their business. I think, really take the time, really ask yourself what you need, look at your organization. It's easy to lose sight on quality when you're so absorbed in the day-to-day operations of your business. I don't know if it's a good answer, but I just see a lot of new business owners, and my feeling when I interact with them is they have no idea what they're doing. Not to say that I knew what I was doing. I'm sure I wasn't sure. I'm sure that I wasn't sure what I was doing back in the days. But I think there's just a lot of information, and the liability is huge, and they have to really assess, the liability. They have to really assess what works for them, what works for the clients. But ultimately, we go into this business, we go into this field to want to help people. And this is not, the business that will generate a lot of income for us. I work probably 60 hours a week when I first started. I was up until 3 o'clock last night, just doing something else, right? So there, are you willing to make that sacrifices? And plan. I think you kind of have to make plans, make business plans, ask yourself what you need, what your organization needs, what your staff needs. And I have always said, don't grow too fast. I think that's the biggest mistake I see business owners do. And I know why they have to grow so fast, because it's so tempting. They want to grow because the money's there, right?
The demand,
plus the wait list, the needs is also there. But when you don't have the scale, when you don't have the infrastructure, you can't grow, because your system will collapse, and at that point it's hard to come back. And the paper works for us, right? Because the system works. And the money doesn't work for us to use expensive technology back in the days. And that was one of the reasons that I wasn't ready to move to an online data collection. And again, there are just not a lot of choices. So I think those are all factors that you kind of have to take into consideration. And that's really, I guess that's kind of the piece of business advice I would give to new business owners, is really just take the time. You want to build it. I mean, this is your dream. I'm guessing for a lot of owners out there, this is your dream. You wanted to do this. So let's make sure this dream doesn't, crush you. You want to be successful. You want to build a legacy. So let's make sure that you do it right. You have all the control. I mean, it's all you. You don't have a boss that you have to, answer to. You're your own boss. You get to make the best out of, your dream and your organization. So let's do it that way.
That's great advice. I mean, you made it to 10 years. So
years.
Yeah. And it's going to be at what, the next 10 years and the next 10 years. And
wow.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what after, I probably should retire at some point, but I mean, I'm not even, I'm thinking about it, right? Like what's my plan? It's not going to happen in my second decade. I think I really love this job. I love my people so much that I'm not ready to give it up. I mean, we're about to have 2 staff that are going to celebrate their 10th anniversary.
That's so cool.
Next year. And it's funny, I talked about this all the time. When I draft the PTO policy, I didn't think someone would go beyond 5 years. So I had a lot of PTO for those, senior staff. And now I'm like, maybe that's too much. But really, I mean, that was my thought, right? I mean, obviously it's not too much. They definitely deserve it and they earn it. And want to keep it the same. But really, I mean, that was kind of my mentality back in the days. Like, I don't think anyone would go past 5 years. So whatever, But here we go. We have, 2 that are going to their 10 years. I have, another 10 that have reached 5, 7 years. And wow. To me, that they're my family. I mean, they do the work with me. So I'm not the only person, doing all the heavy lifting. They really have done a tremendous job building this company together with me. So I'm not ready to retire.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to see you go either. Stick around.
It sounds like you've created a company that you're really proud of. It that's a family.
Yeah.
The people want to be a part of.
Yes.
That's awesome. You should be really excited and proud of yourself.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Well, we're really grateful that you chose Motivity. Especially when you chose us. We were pretty new to the market, and we were really excited when we graduated from the pilot program and you're moving forward and rolling it out across your organization, because we know like how much thought you put into that process, and that we stood out among the crowd, meant a lot to us. So thank you. And
thank you so much for having me. And again, I just want to take the last opportunity to applaud you guys for all the customer support work that you've done, especially Tatum.
Thank you.
You've been amazing. And our success in transitioning and using our first online data collection, you have a lot to do with it. So we really appreciate you guys.
You are more than welcome. You and your team made it very easy to do this process. So thank you for making my job easier.
Thank you so much, Ivy.